So, welcome everybody to another episode of the INTUNE podcast with myself, Ashley Velvet Frost. And today I've got a very exciting guest who's featuring under the frequency of beta, which is relationships and connections. And this is Simon Nicolaas. Welcome, Simon. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I love the name of your podcast, by the way.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, the five frequencies are these brainwave frequencies that we have in the different brainwave states. And yeah, the beta frequency is, I think, one of the most important because it's about our connections. So this is our relationships, not just with our lovers, but our friends, families, our society, our business partners, our colleagues. So it's a very, very broad category. And yeah, Simon is a relationship coach, currently based in Bali and originally from Canada, and has been working with people to help raise their self-esteem, their worth, and to have much healthier and more vibrant relationships. So
You got it.
you could
Yeah,
join
to touch
me.
on that about what do you call it? A beta? Is it beta?
Yes.
So I don't know a lot about that kind of stuff. I learned a little bit from Joe Dispenza, but the different frequency that we operate in. And I was, because you sent me this questionnaire at the beginning and it asked me that. And I was grateful that you actually said what those things mean. Otherwise I wouldn't have known what to put.
Perfect. Yeah, the beta brainwave frequency is one where we're learning often. It's the if you look at the busiest, it's like gammas first, then we have beta, and it's like the one where we're in this state where we're learning often. So with relationships, this is often the foundation of how we learn in the beginning of the world when we're with our families and how our worldview and paradigms are formed. So it felt fitting that connections fit into this area. And
Yeah,
also, if you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which do link a little bit to that, then love, belonging, and connection is also featured more as like the fundamental basis of the big pyramid.
right.
Yeah.
Monkey see, monkey do kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a huge reason why I became a relationship coach, is because my concept of relationships was movies and family members. That was it.
Well, this
And
is
so,
perfect. This I will not ask exactly like how you've got here today and how you've become a relationship coach.
yeah, well, for me, I've been always fascinated with personal development, even when I was in my teens. One of the first personal development books I read was Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, because I was stuck in the friend zone. I could not, for the life of me, figure out how to get out of the friend zone. I was best friends with a bunch of girls, and no one wanted to move farther than that. And that was frustrating, for any young men out there who experienced that. It's not fun. And then it was just, throwing stuff on the wall to see what sticks, just trial and error of relationships. And I struggled, I struggled in personal relationships. I struggled with commitment. I struggled with overcommitment, blindly committing. And through that experience, I got coaching. I got support. I had some tough breakups. And I got my first relationship coach after doing a lot of other personal development. And when I saw a relationship coach, I was like, this is amazing. Like, I can't believe this is a thing, and I can't believe how obvious it is to get business coaching, but how absolutely rare it is to get relationship coaching when it's such an important area of life. And I was kind of in a transition in my career as well. I was a kinesiologist. I owned a gym in Vancouver, and we did some coaching on movement, a little bit of lifestyle coaching. And I kind of fell out of love with that. And then it was like, wait, maybe I can do this. It's helped me so much. I can use my personal life experiences. I can maybe put something together. And then it was about trying things out and developing the Level Over Fear program that I have now.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's so relationships seem like such a topic that's a bit taboo, a little bit uncomfortable for people of like, how could somebody else know how my relationship's meant to work? So can you explain a little bit maybe what does it actually mean to be a relationship coach?
Yeah, well, like you said, it's such a vulnerable thing to address. It's pretty easy to go, hey, I'm having trouble meeting my bottom line. I need support in creating this amount of revenue. To go, I'm having trouble with my commitment and my communication skills, or maybe I have a temper. To admit that is a huge courageous act. So that huge first step is required to even, make a difference, to address that there is a problem. So for me, relationship coaching, what it looks like is, really helping people connect to themselves about what they truly want, getting really clear about it,
Mhm.
and then being able to communicate to others what those expectations are, and maybe where I might be pushing back responsibility or acting like things are a particular way. Because so often in relationships, people are walking around with unspoken expectations. And so a big part of my job is to get those expectations in the forefront so that we can actually have what we want, rather than wandering around just thinking someone's just going to get it.
Well, it's like you say, we've all grown up watching Disney movies, so you kind of expect, yes, my man, my prince will do this for me, and then I'm going to live this kind of life, and you live happily ever after. But most movies, that phrase "living happily ever after," that's when the work begins. That's when the relationship begins.
Right. That's the honeymoon stage.
Yeah.
No movies past the honeymoon stage. They go, so it's
Exactly.
fireworks. The thing I got from movies a lot was the grand gesture.
Hmm.
When I was younger, I would always do the grand gesture, but I didn't work on the foundation of the relationship. I was like, look at this amazing thing I did for you. Aren't I great? And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
I
yeah,
gave this 1 + 1 = 2. I give my love, therefore you give me love.
pretty much.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So something that you've already mentioned is that oftentimes people even don't even know what it is that they want, let alone like being able to communicate those things. So I mean, how do you help with your clients tapping into exactly what their needs are? Because this is such an inner child focus. It's such a like pain point. Sometimes we don't like to admit that we really need so much stuff. It's like, especially I notice, and I can say this from experience as a used to work in corporate, hyper independent kind of masculine woman. It's like, I don't need no one. Like, I don't need
Yes,
your help. I
totally.
don't need your input as a man. And it's a lot of unconditioning to get past that, at least from the female perspective.
Totally. Because for some women, that's really worked professionally. You know, maybe that was a recipe that really helped them out professionally, but is detrimental in connection. And it's hard to navigate the balance of that. So there's two ways that I do it. The very first way is, someone doesn't know what they want. Okay, well, what do you not want? Sometimes that's a lot easier to say. Well, I don't want someone who says this, or I don't want someone who does that. And I don't want, and it's like, okay, great. What's the opposite of that? Suddenly it gets a lot easier.
Mhm.
I don't want to not be touched. Okay, so what do you want? I want affection. Okay, great. I don't want to come home and silently eat dinner together. So you want communication.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So we start to unravel it a little bit. It's kind of like peeling back an onion. And then I say, okay, well, if you were communicating, what would you be communicating about?
Mhm.
Well, I'd love for us to, talk about our dreams and our hopes, or maybe a project we're working on together, or, the future. Oh, okay, great. What would be in that future? And so my job is really just to pose those questions to start to go down that path that very easily stops with men are all like this or women are all like that.
Yeah.
And then it's a write-off. Then we can't even have the conversation.
Yeah.
So like, if men are all like that, well, what could the man that you want be like? Let's just imagine, not have to pretend it's real yet.
Mhm.
And so then we go down that path and it creates some opportunity.
I love this because this also links almost to law of attraction work. If you're visioning and specifying to the universe what it is you want, and I know from experience because I've done this before, I once listed out almost 25 characteristics or like mannerisms of a partner that I really was seeking. And then 3 or 4 months later, I met someone who literally embodied that whole list. I even showed them the list, like some really weird specifics. And they were like, wow, like I am like that. How did you know? And I was like, I was calling it in. It's like manifesting as well. It's knowing what you want, and the universe can start putting things in place to deliver that to you.
But I bet you didn't stop there, because that's a key step, right? Getting clear about what you want. But the next question goes, okay, what kind of person would attract that kind of person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then your job is to be that,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
is the step that a lot of people skip.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
want $1 million. Look, I wrote it down. Look,
Yeah.
I wrote it down. Okay, what kind of person attracts $1 million? Don't worry about it. I'm going to sit on the couch. It's just going to show up.
Yeah.
Like,
100%.
no, there's a participation. Not saying it has to be hard. It doesn't have to be hard, but it takes an active participation as well, which I think is the question so few address. They're kind of like, I want this perfect person. Well, first of all, no one's perfect, and you've got your flaws too. The question is, can you be great together?
Yeah. I've heard people saying like, I'm looking for my king. And it's like, cool, are you embodying your queen? And it's like, are you really being the
Question.
best version of yourself? Not to say you can't have flaws, like you say, that makes you yourself and your character. But
Right.
it's like, oh yeah, I really want someone who's like adventurous and all these things. It's like, are you also adventurous? Like, it's a
Bingo.
great mirror exercise to go back to.
Because if that king walked by, would he be interested in talking to you? Or are you just
It's a tough pill
expecting
to
him to
swallow
just,
sometimes.
that's a tough one to
Yeah.
swallow. Then we gotta go, shit, I've been complaining about my life and I haven't got some things together. And it's like, well, that king's just gonna walk on by.
Yeah, and sometimes it's more also the energy. It may like if
It's
you
it
if you're
is
going
that.
about life, yeah, you may not have X, Y, Z on paper, but if you're carrying that like clarity
Yeah.
and that confidence, then it's more likely going to be a vibrational match. But this is all the how element of the law of vibration also. If you're on this level and the person that you're wanting is on that kind of level, then of course you're not going to find each other.
Which I think isn't talked about enough on a more basic level, because I can tell you're a very spiritual person.
Yeah.
And I think the basic level of that is people walk into a room and there's a certain attraction that some people have. And it isn't necessarily like symmetry in their face. It's not like a physical, there's an energy. And we all have had that time where we're like, there's something going on over there. Like, I kind of want to go over there and see what's happening. They're talking about something interesting. And I think that's the energy and frequency that some people who haven't had those kind of conversations think is far-fetched, but they understand it at that level.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's what you're pointing to as well, is tapping into that energy. Am I operating from that energy? Okay, if I'm not, what's missing? What's getting in the way? Maybe it's a past relationship that's incomplete. Maybe it's a limiting belief that we haven't clarified.
And I think this really covers around the whole building self-worth and building somebody's, let's say, confidence about who they are and what they have to offer to themselves and the world. So, I mean, how do you go about helping people with building their confidence with your coaching?
So this is the thing, you can encourage someone all day long, but they have to see it for themselves. So I really pride myself on not telling people what to do and creating opportunities for them to discover for themselves. So once we've established what they want, we've created clarity around that. Then we go, okay, what would it look like to play this like a game? In real life, what does that have? So if you're being attractive, spontaneous, adventurous, okay, what's an adventure you want to go on? Okay, we're gonna now engage in that adventure. And so I've got a bunch of exercises where it's like, okay, we're gonna put ourselves in positions to have conversations with people. We're gonna actually have communication, maybe with a stranger. We're gonna have communication with our family that we've been disconnected to. And that's where the transformation happens, is in real life. I am always careful to make sure people don't get too obsessed with the book, with the journaling, with the like, okay, great, you've done all the journaling. Now, what does that look like in real life? Does it look like calling that best friend you've been avoiding? Because in that communication where you're completely honest and take 100% responsibility, you're going to discover yourself in a new way. And that's how you develop confidence. So depending on the game they create, my job is to help hold them accountable to that game and essentially create the minimal step to improvement. So I'm all about aiming low. I used to be about aiming high, shoot for the stars and all. And I'm like, okay, that's a good place to start, shoot for the stars. But after you shoot for the stars, it becomes overwhelming. And there's just like, it's like rungs on a ladder. You see, okay, that's where I want to be, but you haven't got the 6 first rungs on the ladder. You can't even reach that. So it's like, how can we break this down to the smallest possible step? Where am I avoiding communication? Am I kind of dating someone that I don't actually want to be with? Maybe it's time to end that thing.
Yeah.
Because I promise you, if your king found that out, he's walking right by.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is something it resonates really deep because relationships are not just romantic. So if your communication kind of sucks in your romantic relationships, it probably sucks with other people in your life. And that's something that it's like, okay, it's not just one bubble and then this is the rest of the relationships that you have. It's improve on one area, everything is going to flow. Your heart connection with people will flow. Life will be a lot easier. There's a lot less misunderstandings going on as well.
Sometimes people are very disappointed that, maybe 3 sessions into my program, they start to realize, oh shit, I got to talk to my parents. I gotta get some things cleared up. And that's obviously not what they signed up for. But like you just said, it's having an impact on other areas of your life.
Yeah.
One of my coaches, oh, this was such a shitty pill to swallow. He said to me, how you are with your mom is how you'll be with your future partner. And I was not proud of how I was with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
She deserved more respect. She deserved more of my time. She deserved more connection.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated hearing that because I was like, if that's true, well, I better get reconnected to my mom because it doesn't matter what I'm going to do in the dating world if I'm still avoiding all that.
Yeah, if there's imbalances or dysfunction with your primary caregivers, they, especially the opposite sex one, they are the ones that you form your first relationship with. So,
right.
I mean, do you cover this with the people that you coach with also? The parent relationships?
Yeah, that's module 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's when we get into our relationship blueprint and how that was mapped out, how we actually came up with the traits that represent a potentially good partner and where we learned how to behave around the opposite sex. Like you just said, that was our first template. And it has an impact. It has an impact on how we show up. And until we recognize what that impact is, it's pretty hard to interrupt patterns that aren't working. So we got to get to the heart of like, oh, wow, you know what? There's something that my mom does that always triggers me this way. Does that also happen in your romantic relationships? Oh, shit. Yeah, it does. Well, let's go where it all started. And some people I work with, maybe their parents passed away. And you can do this with parents that have passed away. You don't have to be alive. Obviously we wish they were, but you can do it in that way for anyone who's like, oh, I feel like I've lost my chance. You can still get complete.
The first ever coaching that I received was family constellation coaching. And this was, again, if you've had people who passed or missing or you don't have a contact with, and I know a lot of people who it's not safe for them to be in touch with that family member for whatever reason. And there's still a lot of like unresolved patterns and trauma going on. So it can still be healed. I mean, is there other ways apart from family constellation work that people can do this? Is this like internal dialogues or conversations or, I think I'm also curious for this. So I'm sure the people who haven't heard of it would be interested.
Yeah. So the way I do it is I have them write a letter, a practice letter, and that letter can be given to the person or it cannot be. It doesn't have to. So like you said, maybe there's someone in your family that's actually unsafe for you to be sharing certain things, or to be with them in some physical form. Okay, that's fine. We can do it over here with you because that's really what we're doing anyway. We're getting you complete regardless of what anyone else has ever done.
Yeah.
They don't have to change for you to be empowered.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that many are hung up on. Is that I'm putting my growth in someone else's hands. I'm putting my trauma in someone else's hands. Yeah. I can't remember. There's someone who said this quote. It's like something like, my trauma is not my fault, but it's my responsibility. Something like this.
I have my medicine woman was like, it's your responsibility and ability to respond to what's happened to you. Like it's really, yes, you can put your blame in the, oh, my parents did this or didn't give me enough love or they treated me this way. And it's like, it's not being self-responsible. It's not being empowered to really, it's always being a victim, to not take control of your life. And I myself have been in that position when you're just like wallowing too much in the past. And yeah. So, I mean, if someone's kind of in this state, like I know a lot of people who are delving into, let's say, like attachment styles, why they are the way they are. How do you get past that block of like being also probably a bit angry at how you were raised, even though your parents could love you too much or too little? Like you see both. Sometimes it's smothering, sometimes it's neglecting. So how can people take back this empowerment?
Well, there's a key. You talked about being a victim, right? And by the way, anyone who's listening, we're not trying to pretend like this stuff's easy.
Yeah.
I was on the phone today. I had 3 calls today, and I was in tears with all 3 of them because I was so moved by their courage to share what they want and how easy it is to not do that. How easy it is to say the world is like this or they're like that, and that's just the way it is. So the first thing is, can you crack the door open to a new possibility? And a huge part of that is getting fed up with something. So you talk about maybe a parent loves too much or not enough, and you're recognizing maybe a theme in your relationships. You're recognizing a pattern. I keep ending up with this kind of person. It keeps ending this kind of way. Okay, are you tired of that yet? Because once you get tired of it, then you go, I want another way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that sparks the first moment of curiosity. Okay, if I want another way, okay, how do I do that? Okay, I'm going to get some support. Maybe that's a therapist. Maybe that's a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's just starting to say it out loud to our friend. I'm tired of ending up in this situation. And maybe that friend's going, finally, you're saying that, because we're tired of hearing about it.
That's always the worst, when your friends have been saying things and they're like,
you can't
now
see
you
it.
see, it's been years.
Yeah. But you can't see it. When you're in it, you can't see it. I've done group coaching, and the person who's at the front of the room is the last person to get it. Everybody else watching the person being coached sees it like crystal clear, but the person in the front of the room doesn't see it yet. That's life.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is the mission of a coach, is to help people see what they don't see right now.
Yeah.
And you can't tell them that.
Yeah.
Which is so frustrating sometimes as a coach, because sometimes I want to shake somebody. But it's like, if I'm doing that, I'm actually projecting onto them. That's about me.
Yeah. You just
That's
have to
not
hold the mirror to be like, hello.
Yeah. Which is something, we have to keep in check as coaches. It's a tough thing sometimes too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really an element of making sure that you're not putting your own trauma, your own childhood onto other people as well. Yeah.
Mm.
So I do want to ask you a little bit about attachment styles, because we are talking about the topics of parents and relationships we have with our parents. Do you notice, I know that I've seen on your videos that you are more of an avoidant, unless this was just on Reels that you're doing. What kind of attachment style do you have, or have you?
I'm secure. I'm secure
balanced?
now. I'm secure now. I've been anxious,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been avoidant. I would say I've spent most of my life in the anxious attachment style.
Mm-hmm.
My Reels are me acting a lot more, so that's probably why you got that. Now I'm in. Thank you very much. Now I'm in a place of security, but for the most of my life, I would say I was in the anxious attachment style.
Yeah, same. I would also concur. And it's often funny because anxious will then attract avoidant, and then it's like the perfect kind of like earthquake coming together of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, for anybody who doesn't know about it, could you give really like a very, very quick overview of what the different attachment styles mean, just for a bit of context before we kind of go into them a bit more?
Yeah. So attachment style is how you relate to other people. So we all have a way that we do that, and a way that we're triggered when it's not working out. And the 3 main ways are anxious, avoidant, and secure. Mm-hmm. There's if you want to learn more about it, there's an amazing book called Attached by Amir Levine. I highly recommend that book. It gives great examples of the different attachment styles, as well as tools on how to shift your attachment style. Mm-hmm. You also can take a quiz to find out what yours are. Don't worry, if it's one you weren't hoping for, they can change. You're not born with this and stuck with this. But that's the gist of it. So do you want me to explain like each attachment style a little bit, like what it is?
Yeah, maybe in like a few words.
Yeah, so the anxious attachment style is often concerned with being liked. They're concerned with how they're perceived by others. They get really worried when they're not getting attention. They tend to over communicate, overshare. We tend to essentially sometimes cause problems that aren't even there. Avoidant is the opposite spectrum. Avoidant is running from problems. Avoidant person says, I don't want to talk about it. Leave me alone. They are often less sensitive to certain things. Now, the anxious attachment style is really valuable because you're very aware, but hyper aware, and therefore often triggered. Mm-hmm. Secure is the middle. That's where we want to be. Secure is, I love someone, but whether they choose to be with me or not is not going to ruin my life. I'm still my own person.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I love them, I'm also unattached to how this goes. That's where we are the rock
Mm-hmm.
in that those waves crashing back and forth.
Yeah. I can also resonate that there's times when you've been super stable or super insecure attachment style. So what happens when you have, let's call it a relapse, or something happens that you're like, wait, I thought I was secure, and now I'm having all these like intrusive thoughts in either direction. So how can somebody try to kind of recenter themselves a bit when that happens?
Like you said, like relapse, because I think that's exactly what it feels.
Yeah.
How do you reset yourself? You're feeling secure and maybe you just got triggered by something. Yeah, well, the key part is to recognize that it's a trigger in the first place and it's not real. Likely it's not something that's real. So I'll give you for example, because that's happened to me. I've been secure and then maybe my partner showed patterns of avoidance. Maybe I wanted to bring up an important topic and they kept saying no to talking about it, or maybe later. And then my anxiety goes, oh my gosh, maybe she's going to leave me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, then the secure version comes in and goes, wait, did she say she was going to leave you? Okay.
Yeah.
No, she didn't. What can you be responsible for? Okay, maybe there's a way I'm not communicating what I want clearly. Maybe I need to say, hey, this really matters to me. Can we talk about it in a certain timeline, or is there a certain day that you're available to talk about it? You know, and the anxious person will go, we need to talk about this now. And I can't go to bed unless we talk about this.
Yeah.
So it's recognizing that it is a trigger. And so there's two key things. I think if you go to anxious, pause. Your job is to pause. If you're an anxious attachment style, your first reaction is a meltdown. It is not going to be effective. Your job is to close your mouth and rest. And I promise you, your second reaction is going to be genius. It's going to be magic, but very little time do we even get to the second one because we're so busy being triggered by the first one. So that's a superpower. The avoidance attachment style, when we're triggered in that direction, all we want to do is run, get out there, not face anything. Our job is to stay at the table. Even if we're not trying to deal with it, just stay there, stay in the conversation. You don't even have to figure it out. But if you can just keep your ass in the saddle, you're going to come back to security.
It's almost like both of those options. It's like breathe, just take a breath. I get this image of like the secure attachment style is like a parent in the middle, just like very calm, and then either side it's like screaming kids.
Yeah, you'd hope that's the parent you had.
Yeah,
it was maybe the screaming parent or the one that was never there.
Oh yeah, let's not go into that. You can split the attachment styles of your parents as well, even with their
another
children.
episode.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of different topics that you can go into with this. Totally. Something that has just come up if we're talking about anxious and avoidant, and this I feel like is a big topic in society, especially with dating, and that is the topic of ghosting, because this is like, if you are anxious attachment style, that is like the worst situation you can go through. And yeah, talk me through that a bit, because you must have people who you coach who have, I'm not going to call it suffered from ghosting, but have experienced ghosting. And yeah.
I'm glad you didn't call it that, because that's perpetuating the victim mentality. Yeah, experienced ghosting. I know I have. I know I've actually ghosted as well, and it's very painful. You know, I've been in the anxious attachment style where I've been ghosted. So when I'm coaching someone who's had that experience, what I'm looking to transform them to is that was a gift. That someone walking out of your life is always a good thing, because you only want people in your life who are voluntarily choosing to be there. Now, if you're anxiously attached, it's really hard to see that, because it feels like your character is being rejected. It feels like there must be something wrong with me that caused this. And so what we're looking to do is distinguish someone else's behavior from our experience. Because most of the time in relationships, we are evaluating ourselves, our stock, the quality of how we are, based off of how people treat around us. But that might not be an accurate representation. That might be a reflection of them. So if someone's ghosted you, my goal is to help people see that that's more a reflection of the person doing the ghosting than yourself. The next step of that is, what am I doing that's attracting people who are ghosting? Is there something I'm not being clear about? Is there something I'm not communicating? Now that's distinct from there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the default. There's something wrong with me. No. But that doesn't mean there isn't something missing that we could improve. It's a tough one to separate.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I remember going through a phase when it wasn't just relationships, it was like job interviews, like never hearing back from people. Like also
totally.
like you get this a lot, and then you're just like, okay, this is really a pattern going on. Like, what is going on? Am I ghosting myself somehow in life? So there's also, it's an interesting thing. Like most of the time you can use everything as a mirror back to yourself. If you're being disrespected, like how are you disrespecting yourself? If you're being ignored, where are you ignoring yourself as well? But it's a very difficult self exercise to do, because I myself struggled to even put those pieces together of like, what is going on?
I think what's key is in the question. So the disempowering question is, what's wrong with me? That's where people go, what's wrong with me? Why didn't I get that job? What's wrong with me? The question I like to ask is, what's missing that would make a difference?
Yeah.
And there's a famous example of Michael Jordan watching game tape, and they say no one's watched more game tape than Michael Jordan. That's why he was so great. He's always watching himself, but he's not watching himself to see what's wrong with how he plays. He's watching himself to see what's missing that would make him better. It takes away that personal attack.
Yeah.
And so I think it's in the questions, like, how do we talk to ourselves? What's missing that would make a difference? Doesn't mean you can't improve, right? Maybe you get the job interview and it's not happening. Maybe what was missing was your address wasn't on there or something. Who knows? It could have been something so basic that you already knew.
Yeah. There's often stories where you'd be like, yeah, well, maybe they got hit by a bus, and maybe it's like,
they're filling in the
no,
blanks.
honey, like there's a movie that came out maybe in the 2000s, like he's just not that into you. And it's like, it really is. It's like, if it's not 100% yeah, then it's a no. And that's another, like, there's so many tough pills to swallow sometimes when it comes to relating and coming to interactions with other humans, especially when the heart is involved, because it feels so delicate.
Totally. And that's why I think it's so important to become secure.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to deal with that stuff when we're operating from a place of insecurity.
Yeah.
On both sides, the avoidant and anxious. But if you haven't heard of that, anybody listening, highly recommend you get into that, because it'll give you some tools, and it'll kind of give you some recognition of what's happening.
Yeah.
Am I reacting to the real world, or am I reacting based off of my attachment stuff?
Yeah. Amazing. So I have one other slightly controversial relationship topic that I want to get your input on. And this is the concept of open relating. So I wonder, do you coach people who are purely in monogamous relationships or other types of relationship paradigms as well?
So I have never coached anybody in a open relationship. I've coached people who've wanted to be in an open relationship, where it didn't end up leading to that. I personally have never seen it work out successfully long-term. I've seen it work out short-term, for a year or maybe two, but I've never seen it work out long-term. That being said, I believe relationship is about negotiation. It's about negotiating each other's wants and desires and finding a common ground that both people voluntarily agree to. And so for some people, that looks like maybe they've been married for 10 years and they're looking to have a sexual adventure with someone else. And can they communicate that and voluntarily agree or disagree to it? So that's the part I'd be interested in supporting people with.
Yeah.
That's been my experience of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I also agree that the long-term aspect, it's like, I know very few people in my life who are deeply doing their inner work, reflection, shadow work, ability to communicate what's going on to the level where you could truly let an open partnership flourish without there being hurt feelings, chaos ensuing. And
there's a lot of landmines in that scenario. And I
Yeah.
get the desire for it. And, there's the whole arguments, that's what we used to be like and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And it's tough. The whole what we used to be like thing is like, yeah, but we're not living in that world anymore. The world's very different.
Yeah.
And do we have the tools, like you said, like, am I secure enough for that to happen?
Yeah.
Not let my imagination run wild. Is my partner just sleeping with that person, or do they love me less than them?
Yeah.
So
I really get it. The aspect of like, it's in our biology. It's not natural to be monogamous, because otherwise we would be with one person for the whole time we're alive, not just for each marriage. Like, by the fact that you can have multiple marriages and like loves in your life means we're not monogamous. But we are living in a society where it's very difficult. The laws do not allow it. It's frowned upon. If you want children, it's more difficult. It's a lot of blocks in the way to actually trying to live that expression. But do you not find sometimes that then there's people who are kind of carrying this, maybe say like shadow or shame, or they really feel not fully alive in a monogamous relationship, but then they don't really know how to truly express it? It's a real dilemma, I think, for a lot. And then they end up cheating.
Totally. They end up cheating, or they develop some other addiction that is to quell that feeling. Maybe they drink, maybe they do something else. Yeah, I get that. I mean, and it's understandable. We live in such a visual world. People are showing themselves more, provocatively than maybe ever before. There's a lot, I think there's a lot less loyalty than there used to be to an individual, but a huge part of my coaching is around commitment. And commitment is often regardless how you feel. That's why when people get married, there are vows.
Yeah.
Because you're making a promise, and the promise doesn't go, I'll take care of you when I feel like it.
Yeah.
Promise goes, I'll take care of you no matter what. And inevitably in a relationship, you are not even going to like the person that you're with. But will you love them? Will you love them when you're not in the mood? Will you love them when they don't look the way they did when you met them? Doesn't mean there isn't going to be a temptation. There might be that, sexy guy or beautiful woman at work, and she's got all the things that you remember your partner used to have and all that shit. I get the temptation, but what are you going to let you win? Your integrity, your commitment, or your impulse? Not saying that's easy again.
Yeah,
and not saying you can't create some alternative. Not saying you can't communicate something. Maybe you guys can work something. Maybe your partner's feeling the same way, and maybe she wants to do that. And maybe you guys talk about it, and through talking about it, you realize, actually, wait, I don't want to do that. It was just a fantasy that slipped my mind. So it's chemicals, like you said, it's biological. It's also biological for us to, fight for food, and we probably used to kill each other with our bare hands too. I'm glad we're not doing that anymore. So it's tough.
Yeah.
If someone can work it out, I would love to know how they're doing it.
I think we're going gradually each generation. And it's like, even if you think in the last 20 years, the concept of like polyamory and open relationships talked about so much more, and so much shifts, but it's for like this generation. And from my experience, it's like, it's a bit much. Also for my nervous system, was when I was open relating, it's like, if your nervous system's not in check, if your attachment styles aren't in check, it's just like, it's a recipe for a lot of pain as well.
Yeah, maybe it's possible, like you said, with those things really managed.
So I'm curious how you coach people with the commitment aspects. Like how, because I know nowadays the rate of divorces is so high, because people may be having these issues, have that conversation, and then instead of being, well, we persevere nevertheless, they're like, okay, we divorce or we split. So how do you navigate that? Because that's a huge topic at the moment, of people splitting after coming together.
Well, it's a very gradual process. They don't address that in the beginning. For someone to, learn what commitment means, it's going to take some unveiling of some things, because chances are they committed before and it didn't go so good. So now their definition of commitment might feel like a red flag. It might feel like an absolute danger zone. Last time I committed, he cheated, or last time I committed, I got left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the moment I showed my cards and showed how much I loved them, they stopped loving me.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to get to the source of, well, what actually happened in the past? Where are you dragging that's causing you to not be able to commit? So that's one part of it. The other part is connecting people with their own integrity. So, you know, integrity is often talked about with like, you know, do what you say you're going to do at work. You know, and the way I address it is like, integrity is knowing yourself and following your intuition. And most people are completely disconnected to their intuition.
Their values.
And so, say it again.
And their values.
And their value. So it's not, so you can't really commit then.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so wishy-washy. Who am I? What matters to me? I don't know. Like so once we get that established,
mm-hmm.
you know, where am I out of integrity in my life? What is there to put in?
Mm-hmm.
Then I have actually a place to stand that I can commit.
Yeah.
But until we get complete with the past, you can't commit. It's like, to me, it's like, you know, you're trying to paint rainbows over shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, well, clean up the shit first, you know, and then let's get a blank canvas and paint.
Yeah. I love the analogy of if you have a garden, you're like pulling out all the weeds and then like churning up the soil again so they can plant some new ones coming through.
Yeah. And then I don't think people look at relationships like that. I think we go, okay, I'm just going to stick this sunflower like on top of the compost bin. It's like, well, you know, luck.
I love that one. I mean, so this brings to mind if people are doing, let's say, like an inventory of their past relationships, like, oh, I'm holding on to anger because someone treated me this way, and then this other person did this, and this other person betrayed me, and I'm carrying that with me, say, like as emotional baggage. I remember there's this comedian, Eliza, I think she's called, and she does this skit where you come in as in a relationship, you come in through the door like looking all beautiful, and then after like 3 months, it's when the ogre appears with the big bag of sack, and it's like dragging a sack of emotional baggage in, just like putting it onto the shelves, like ready to open up in the next argument. So I also like, how do you help people with, I mean, identifying it is one point, but how moving through all of this junk that you're carrying as well?
Well, it's tough to answer in the short form because I have a whole exercise.
Give me long form.
You'd have to, you know, we really dive into it, you know, and I have a course that I put people through that, you know, helps do this, and then calls that bring it to a deeper level. But the short form would be, okay, what happened in those past relationships? Not what you think happened, what actually happened. Mm-hmm. What did they say? What was the source of the breakup? And what limiting belief did I pile on top of that? Mm-hmm. And that takes some unveiling. It's hard to be honest about that. So it's hard to see it, you know, and it might be like, I can't trust women. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So you're walking around with, I can't trust women. Imagine what it's like for a woman to be with you then. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's in the background. So while she's showing herself to you, just, you know, being herself with you, mm-hmm. right there is, I don't trust you. Well, people can feel that. Yeah. That's going to, and this is a brand new person. So often we're talking to the new person like the old person. I'm addressing you like you're my ex. Well, I didn't do anything so your ex did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not operating from a blank slate. That's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So that's the first, but we go through different relationships in your life, you know, the ones that really, you know, were impactful. Maybe they left a scar, and we go, okay, what actually happened, and what limiting belief are you walking around with that? And then the next part of the exercise is like distinguishing, like getting really clear about reality and the story we're making up about that reality. Mm-hmm. You know, one of the confrontations I had in a previous relationship was I wanted that person to show love when we saw each other, like greet each other at the door, hug, kiss, like take moments to be with each other. That was really important to me. When I addressed that, I was really scared to bring it up. I was scared I would seem too needy. So I kind of brought it up. And she said, well, that's just not really something I do. And then I left it there. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of the end of our relationship, because I stepped over something I needed and I didn't negotiate with her to come to a new agreement. So I was walking around like, she doesn't care. Women don't care. Women don't listen. And it's like, okay, but what actually happened? What happened was she said she doesn't do that. So Simon, where are you not being responsible? I didn't communicate what I actually wanted there because I was scared of how I would look. That's where we begin to have power.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see it takes some steps to get there, because I was convinced that what happened and the story I had about what happened were exactly the same thing.
Yeah. It's an illusion we tell ourselves almost.
It's an illusion. It caters to some belief that's like perfect evidence. I was talking to a client today. Her story that she's working to transform is, am I good enough?
Mm-hmm.
And so when she's feeling not good enough, all she sees is evidence proving that story, and completely is blind to the things that are acknowledging her, celebrating her. And she just got, she wanted to get the more money in her profession, and she asked for it for the first time in her life, and she got it. And she was questioning whether she was good enough, right? You can see how unreal that is. It's so absurd.
Yeah, there's something that's just come through about that. It feels like avoidance, and so the fear of like being vulnerable, and fear is such a thing we try and avoid all the time. It's like you don't want to speak your needs because it's like, I'm afraid of I'm going to look needy. I'm afraid I'm going to look desperate. And that's the root, I think, of so many miscommunications, is that we're just afraid. And yeah, I don't know, it's something that I notice a lot. It's scary. The heart is like, also to open your heart and to show people the real you is something we don't always allow. And yeah, if there's anybody who's feeling particularly afraid to be vulnerable with others or afraid to show themselves, is that what kind of advice would you give them, or just like a gentle reassurance or something?
Yeah, well, I think you hit the nail on the head. The fear is the motivator. That's the thing leading. That's why I named my program Love Over Fear, because I believe we only make every choice from one of two spots.
Yeah.
From fear or from love.
Yeah.
For me, with that conversation with that former partner, fear.
Mm-hmm.
If I was being loving, I would have communicated what there was for me, which takes courage.
Yeah. Even just saying it, it's like such a release, I feel. Like, you cannot feel fear at the same time as feeling love. It's not possible.
Can't.
Like, try it.
Exactly. And it's distinct. That's why they're so like polarizing. It is distinct. It's very clear. And so, for anyone who's struggling with fear right now, I think, one, stop waiting to be fearless. A lot of people are waiting to be fearless. They think that if they manage their finances, they're not going to be scared of being broke. They think if they're going to wait until someone tells them they love them, then I will be confident enough to go out there. Not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So quit waiting for that ship to come to the docks. Okay. Next one is, what's the smallest thing that would move you forward that you think you could handle? So maybe it's not approaching someone. That seems too scary. Maybe instead it's signing up for an app, saying hi to a stranger. Let's break it down, aim low. Let's make it the smallest possible thing. So if you're afraid of something, if you had that, what would be the thing you would do before it?
Mm-hmm.
Do that instead.
Yeah.
Because I'm not for like, yeah, just buck up and just do it. It's like, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. I think you got to develop that confidence first.
Yeah. And if you're thinking of your nervous system, like to suddenly go running into a cafe and asking someone if they want a coffee with you, who's a hot stranger, like if your nervous system's already not in a safe place, it's going to re-traumatize you almost, and even on just a small level. And then you'll be like, oh, it's speaking to people is horrible. Why would I want to do this? And yeah, I really love that. Aim low.
Aim low. Let's build up to it. And one of the challenges with aiming low for a lot of people is particularly perfectionists, is they feel like it's not good enough. Their low aim will make a difference. Yeah. But here's the thing, aiming low, you're not going to stay there. that we're just looking to build some momentum.
Yeah.
Let's just nudge you. Okay, how do you get a car going 100 kilometers an hour? Well, it's got to start going one first. Let's nudge it in that direction. Before you know it, you're going to be at 100.
Yeah.
It's a tough one to be humble, to do the smaller thing, I think, too. You know, I talk to coaches that have these huge business ideas. And I'm like, okay, have you called anybody? You know, have you done the grunt work that is just so obvious, but it feels useless?
Yeah.
It's actually the key.
Right. It's the key to sustainable change. I think as humans, we think we can make these big leaps like New Year's resolutions and things like this, but it's actually tiny steps. Like you want to make a change so small that you don't even notice you're changing. And that's the thing. It's like these little minuscule step ups. And then after a month or two, you're like, oh, whoa, okay, my habits have really changed. My mindset has really changed from before.
That's right. 1%. I do these things in my program. It's from the first session is they create dailies. Dailies are the 1% actions that move me, that expand me. And your daily might be, I took 3 breaths. And maybe in 3 months from now, I meditated for 5 minutes. And maybe 3 months after that, I've done my first breathwork class. And suddenly, meditation is just part of your life. You didn't even realize it just kind of happened.
Yeah.
But this idea of like, okay, now I'm going to meditate 20 minutes every day. And then it's like, you're going to quit. You're going to give up.
Yeah. It takes like 40 days for a habit to be formed. So it's, yeah.
Bit by bit.
Cool. Okay, I have one last question topic. And nowadays, let's say post-corona, it's a changed world. I know things are opening up and there's a lot more opportunities of like going out. But I know a lot of people, especially when we end up going into different lockdowns and there's a lot of separation, people saying it's just really hard to meet someone nowadays. Like I remember during the lockdown, most people were just going on like Tinder dates and just that the local park was like where everyone was going on walks around the park with different dates. And it seems like it is harder to meet people nowadays. So if someone says that to you, which I know it sounds like a limiting belief already, but if you're maybe more like nervous, introvert, worried about your health as well, if you don't want to be going out to big festivals or things like that, how can people try and meet their king or queen?
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, before COVID, people said the same thing. This isn't a new thing. There's always something, you know, there's always something that proves the context we're in. I believe however we live is based on the context we're living in. So if I'm in the context that dating's hard, Corona or no Corona, I'm going to find a reason that makes dating hard. So first part is to just get that you probably said that before Corona happened. Second part is, yeah, there's things to manage, you know, particularly around health. Okay. Maybe there are things to communicate. You know, if you're someone who's concerned about being with someone who's vaccinated or not, it's important to bring that up, which is a great exercise for you in communication. And in fact, may very quickly weed out those people who are not for you. I also think if you're to shift the context, I think Corona has actually made people a lot more present to what's important to them. I think people now value connection more than they ever have. So that's the flip side. Now people are like, you know what? Being alone in my house for 6 months is not fun. I like to have a partner. You know, which guess what? You're not the only one thinking that. So maybe now people are even more intentional about what they want. You don't have to waste your time with someone who's just kind of dating around, and you get to find someone who's looking for a relationship. So I think in the face of Corona, I get that there's less social opportunities for that. And so you might need to recalibrate how that looks. Maybe it's time to start sharing with your friends what kind of relationship you're interested in. Maybe they know someone who knows someone. Maybe it looks like going on apps, you know. And I'm not for or against apps. I think there's a great success stories. I think there's also a lot of, you know, terror stories. But I think it's about pivoting the meaning we're making about it, you know, and taking that responsibility of, okay, what do I want? How will I put myself in position to attract that? I think that's it. It's also to just be open for things. Like I
you'll learn this about me, but I have this weird superpower that whenever I leave the house, I make friends. Where I go to a cafe or go out or I'm in the supermarket or whatever, and I'm very open to people. Like I make eye contact. If I see someone who also has good energy, I'll smile at them. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go up and just speak to strangers, but to just be energetically open to whatever magic is kind of coming your way. I call it magic, whatever you want to call it, people, opportunities. But the simple gift of eye contact sometimes is enough to just trigger a conversation with someone. And it may not be a date with that person, but you may find you have a thing in common and you go with them to that thing and then you meet someone cool there. So it's the network, like you say, your friends, it's being open to the world. And yeah, all of the work that you help people with prepares the foundations for this, I also feel. So,
And I think with your experience, you just proved that, that is a limiting belief.
Yeah.
What is it about you that has you make friends easily? Well, there's something about your energy. There's something that's attractive about you that draws people in. It's like, okay, well, then there's a way.
Yeah, for sure. It's just open.
And it doesn't have to be obvious. It might not be like, I'm here, king is there.
Yeah.
It might be like you meet someone at a coffee shop who invites you to a thing, who introduces you to someone else, who then, might look like that.
That's quite often, and that's the like beauty of life, I think, like the beauty of connections. You're not just aiming for that partner, you're aiming for a fun route to get to that partner as well. And if you have like joy and laugh and magic and things on the way, then yeah. Oh, okay. This has covered a lot of amazing relationship topics. And before we finish, I do want to touch on the other very important aspect of your life, which is your advocacy for people with Huntington's disease. Would you like to touch on this for a few moments? Because this, I know, is something very important to you as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch on this just for any of your listeners who may be affected by Huntington's disease or know someone affected by Huntington's disease. So my dad died from Huntington's disease 3 years ago, and for those of you who don't know, it's a genetic disorder. You're born with it or you're not. You get your mom's version or your dad's version. So anyone who has a parent of Huntington's disease has a 50% chance that they also will get Huntington's disease. When I was 25, I got tested for the gene and found out that I'm positive for it as well. So until there's a cure, I will get Huntington's disease. I'm intending that I don't. I'm intending through lifestyle factors, through the magic of things that I can't even see yet, that I'm never going to get it. Now, that being said, it's an extremely challenging thing. It's described as having Alzheimer's, ALS, and Parkinson's all at the same time. It's really, really brutal. So to bring it up here is really to just let anyone know who might know someone affected by it or is affected by it, that you're not alone, that you're welcome to reach out to me to talk about it, because it was very isolating for me for a long time. And also to recognize, that these things can be a huge gift. I live a life that I'm very proud of and I'm really happy about. And part of it is because Huntington's disease motivates me to live fully. So we're all dealing with something. I don't know anybody who doesn't have something in their family that's challenging, and so I share this so that you're not alone, and that there are ways that you can not have that thing stop you, and maybe even it can be something that you can use to elevate you.
Well, thank you for your work and for the advocacy of this. It's super important.
Is there anything you want to share? How can I support you? Is there anything you want to share in this amazing conversation? It's been a privilege to talk to you.
Honestly, it has. I mean, a lot of the topics we've touched on have come from personal experience. So this is why I love doing this podcast, because I also learn a lot, and it's also very relevant to my own healing journey as well as other people in my life. So the openness of the topics already is, been nourishing and very enriching. And also to feel your very grounded energy as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Can I ask you, what does INTUNE mean to you?
For me, INTUNE is living a life that's in balance despite the challenges of life that come up, and really being empowered to be my own healer, my own self healer. So knowing that every person I have in my life is also able to heal themselves in whatever way that looks, whether it's their emotions, their body, their spirit, all of those aspects. And this is, for me, why profiling all these people is also so important, because it's the more inspiration you can get from other people. And if you know someone else has done it, then you can also do it. And it's trying to remove the limiting views that we have in life sometimes.
That's very cool. So that you can heal yourself. You believe everyone else can heal themselves. I really hear you seeing people as big people there.
Yeah.
That we all have a power, and sometimes we're aware of that power. Sometimes we're not, but it's still there. Might just be hiding things.
But I feel like a cheerleader. Sometimes I like with my clients, I really see their potential, and it's just like, also the Michael Jackson song "Heal the World" just came to mind, but
right.
So okay, last thing to cover then, how can people find you, work with you? Who in particular would be suitable for the programs and stuff you're doing? And I will also add all of your links below in the description as well.
Amazing. Yeah, so best way to find me is on Instagram at Simon.Nicolaas. As you said, you'll add below. And I have a website, simonpelland.com. I'll be changing the name because you can see that they're not aligned yet. But the people who work with me most often are people who are single looking for a long-term relationship. That's the typical people who work with me. I also work with couples who are like they deeply love each other, but they're having challenges. Maybe they've disconnected. Maybe they've created a pattern of arguments or distance that they don't want to tolerate anymore, and they want to get reconnected.
Yeah.
So those are the people I typically work. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on here. And I mean, I think with the topics we've touched on, there's going to be more episodes of this coming together. But
I would love that. I would love that. Is there anything you want to share? This is your podcast, but I'm probably going to share about you as well on mine. So is there anything you want to share about what you're offering right now? And
yeah, I mean, people will know this through the different episodes, but I work with people with the different 5 frequencies of their life. So holistically looking at their life and where things are out of balance. And I normally work with a 5-month program because it's 5 frequencies. And yeah, just this is one-on-one. This is also in groups if it's with things like emotional release and breath work. And yeah, I just want a whole like army of self-healers to be like cascading around the world. So
you sound like such a perfect person for that, because you talk about your energy, and frequency is energy. So it sounds like that's a real match for you.
Perfect. Thank you. It's nice to hear that as well. Lovely. Okay. I will see everyone else on the next podcast. And again, Simon, thank you very much.